What if the person you've been waiting on to finally make you feel okay never comes? Not because they don't care about you, not because they're incapable of love, but because they were never actually holding the door to your peace in the first place. You were. Somewhere along the way, so long ago you probably don't remember it happening, you handed that key to someone else, a parent, a partner, a friend whose mood decided whether your day was good or bad. Today, we're going to talk about how that key changed hands without you noticing, and more importantly, how you take it back. Here's what you're going to walk away with today. You're going to understand something most people never name, that the anxious, hollow feeling you get when someone pulls away isn't proof that you love them. It's proof that a part of you never finished learning how to hold your own ground. We're going to walk through 5 shifts, loosely built on Carl Jung's ideas about the unconscious mind. That explain why you keep reaching outward for peace, instead of building it inward. Stay until the very end. The 5th shift is the one that actually changes how you love people, without disappearing into them in the process. Let's start with an uncomfortable question. When you picture finally feeling okay, is there a person standing in that picture with you? Most of us don't notice we're doing this. We don't think, I need someone to heal me. We think smaller things. I just want someone who texts back quickly. I just want someone who doesn't get annoyed with me. Underneath those small wishes is something much bigger, an invisible contract we signed without reading the fine print. A belief that our sense of safety is supposed to come from outside of us. Carl Jung spent a lot of his career studying this exact pattern, how people go to incredible lengths, often without realizing it, to avoid sitting alone with their own inner world. Not because they're lazy or weak, but because facing it honestly is genuinely uncomfortable. It's easier to believe that if we just find the right person, love us right, stay close enough, the discomfort will finally stop. Let me tell you about someone I'll call Dana. Dana was the kind of person everyone described as easygoing. She rarely complained, rarely asked for much. If a friend canceled plans last minute, Dana would say, "No worries, totally fine," and mean it on the surface. But underneath that calm exterior, something else was happening. A slightly delayed reply to a text could ruin her whole afternoon. A friend seeming distracted could send her replaying the last 3 days, searching for what she'd done wrong. Dana used to think this was just her being sensitive. It took her years to trace it further back. As a kid, she'd learned to read the emotional temperature of a room before she even walked into it, because whether the adults around her were calm or tense determined whether it was safe to talk, safe to need something. As an adult, she never stopped running that scan. She was still reading the emotional weather of everyone around her, using their mood as the signal for whether she was allowed to relax. This is the part Jung's work makes so clear. What happened to us early on doesn't vanish just because time passes. It sinks below the surface and keeps steering us from there, unnoticed, long after we've forgotten it. So when Dana felt anxious around a distracted friend, it wasn't really about that friend. It was an old alarm system, still running, still scanning for danger that had already passed. And here's the part that stings a little. We rarely call this dependence. We call it love. We call it just really caring about people. But if your calm depends entirely on someone else's mood, tone, or attention, that's not devotion. That's outsourcing your nervous system to another human being. So here's the question worth sitting with. If the people around you disappeared tomorrow, not permanently, just for a while, would you still know how to feel okay? If the honest answer is no, you're not broken. You've just never had to build that muscle. And that's what we're going to talk about next, because knowing a pattern exists is one thing. Stepping out of it is much harder. Once you notice this pattern, there's a tempting next move. I need to find someone even more patient, more understanding, more stable. Someone who can finally give me the safety I never had. That instinct makes sense. but it misses something important. Support can absolutely help you see things you couldn't see alone. A good friend, a good therapist, a genuinely loving partner. These matter enormously. But there is a room inside every person that no one else can walk into. Not because they don't want to, because they physically can't. Jung wrote about this too in his own way, that real growth doesn't come from being told the right things. It comes from consciously facing the parts of yourself you'd rather avoid, and staying with that discomfort, instead of running from it. That kind of awareness isn't handed to you. It has to be lived. Think of it like this. Someone hires the best personal trainer in the world. The trainer can design the perfect program, stand right there in the room, but cannot lift the weight for them. At some point, the client's own muscles have to do the work, or nothing changes. Healing works the same way. A therapist can help you see the pattern. A friend can remind you that you deserve better. But the actual moment where you choose not to send the anxious text, where you sit with the discomfort instead of numbing it, that moment only happens inside you. No one can do your rep for you. This is also why so many people can read every self-help book on the planet, understand their patterns perfectly on paper, and still find themselves stuck in the exact same dynamics 5 years later. They've got the theory. They haven't done the rep. Understanding that you fear abandonment is step 1. Genuinely useful. But it's not the same as the moment you actually stay grounded when someone you love needs space. That second thing, the lived experience, is where the real shift happens. Not in the knowing, in the doing. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. There's no shortcut, no podcast, no video, including this one, can do that inner work for you. What we can do is point you toward the door. Walking through it is still yours to do. So how do you start? Not with some giant overhaul. With something almost embarrassingly small. Pick one recurring emotion, the tightness when a text goes unanswered, and instead of trying to fix it or explain it away, just name it. This is the fear again. This is the old alarm. Write down what triggered it. Notice your first instinct, to chase, to apologize, to disappear. Observe that instinct, without obeying it yet. That's the rep. It won't feel like much the first few times, but each time you do it, you're proving something to the deepest part of your mind, that you can feel discomfort and still be okay. That proof is the foundation everything else gets built on. But here's the harder question waiting on the other side of that door. Once you start trusting your own read on things, will you actually believe it? Or will you still need someone else to nod along first? That's where we're headed next. This next part is subtle, and it's the one most people miss entirely. You can understand your patterns. You can even start doing the inner work. And you can still be handing your decisions to other people, one small moment at a time. Here's what I mean. You know you're unhappy in a job, but you don't leave because everyone keeps telling you how lucky you are to have it. You know a relationship has stopped feeling right, but you stay because on paper, nothing is technically wrong. I heard from someone once, I'll call her Priya, who spent most of her 20s unable to make a real decision without a small committee of opinions first. Before switching careers, she polled her family. Even a weekend alone felt like something she needed permission for. She used to call this being thoughtful, careful. But the more input she gathered, the more lost she actually felt, because everyone was viewing her life through the lens of their own fears, their own idea of what a good life looks like. None of those lenses were hers. The moment that woke her up wasn't dramatic. She simply noticed, one ordinary afternoon, that she had built a life that made everyone around her comfortable, while leaving herself completely worn out. Jung's framework offers a useful lens here. The things that irritate or destabilize us in other people often point back at something unresolved in ourselves. If one person's disapproval can derail your confidence, that's not really about them being persuasive. It's about a part of you that hasn't learned to trust your own judgment, without outside confirmation. Here's a picture worth holding onto. Imagine your life as a small boat, and the wheel has been touched by too many hands. Your family wants you to avoid rocky water. The person you love wants the boat close enough that they never feel far from you. Everyone means well. But a boat with too many hands on the wheel never actually arrives anywhere. It drifts in circles, adjusting constantly to keep everyone comfortable. Taking back the wheel doesn't mean cutting everyone off or refusing advice. It means you're the one who makes the final call on which direction the boat goes. You can still listen. You can still take input seriously. But afterward, you come back to one question, only you can answer. Does this choice bring me closer to who I want to become? Or does it just make me easier for everyone else to deal with? I'll be honest, this part often doesn't feel like freedom at first. It can feel like guilt. People used to being consulted might act like you've become distant. And there's a strange fear, too, because when you make the choice yourself, there's no one left to blame if it doesn't work out. But that discomfort is the price of something valuable, real responsibility. Not the responsibility to be perfect, the responsibility to actually be present for your own life, instead of watching it get steered by everyone else's expectations. And once that authority starts coming back to you, something else happens. Feelings you've been avoiding for a long time start getting louder. Which brings us to the part most people try hardest to skip. Once you stop outsourcing your decisions, something uncomfortable tends to surface. Feelings you've been outrunning for years. Here's the truth almost nobody wants to hear. Staying busy doesn't heal you. It just postpones the bill. You can fill your calendar, jump into a new relationship, and it will work for a while. But the moment things go still, the feeling you were avoiding is exactly where you left it. Waiting. Picture an unopened letter sitting in the back of a drawer for years. You can pile other things on top of it. You can rearrange the drawer so you never see it. But you still carry the weight of it every day. Not from what's written inside necessarily, but from the constant effort of making sure you never accidentally open that drawer. Jung is often linked to an idea that's stuck with people for decades, that pain we refuse to face directly doesn't just disappear. It finds another shape. It becomes anxiety with no clear source, or a pattern in relationships that keeps repeating, no matter who the other person is. The original wound goes underground, but it doesn't go away. It just gets harder to recognize. This tracks with what we understand about the nervous system too. When you avoid an uncomfortable feeling every time it shows up, your brain learns that the feeling must be dangerous, since you keep running from it, so next time it hits harder. But when you can stay with a feeling, even briefly, in a moment where you're actually safe, your nervous system learns something different. That discomfort is survivable. That lesson, more than any single insight, is what actually starts calming things down. This doesn't mean drowning yourself in old pain or making your wounds your whole identity. It means something smaller and more doable. The next time sadness, anger, or fear shows up, you don't immediately slap a label on it like, "I'm being dramatic." You just let it be there for a minute. You ask what it might actually be pointing to. Sadness often marks something genuinely lost. Anger often marks a boundary that got crossed. Fear often marks a part of you trying to protect something that never felt safe enough before. These emotions aren't always giving you an accurate read on the present moment. Sometimes they're echoes of something older, but they're rarely lying about the fact that something deserves your attention. The real shift happens in a tiny gap, the space between feeling something and immediately reacting to it. You can notice you're afraid of losing someone without instantly chasing after them. You can feel a wave of emptiness without grabbing your phone to drown it out. That pause doesn't erase the pain, but it takes away its ability to run your entire life from the driver's seat. And once you can sit with your own feelings without flinching, something shifts in how you show up for other people too. Which brings us to the piece that changes everything about how you love. This is the part I promised you at the start. So let's get into it. Once you've started this inner work, sitting with your feelings, reclaiming your own decisions, something starts shifting in how you love people. You still want closeness, to be chosen and understood, but you stop believing that without it, you'll fall apart. Here's the tricky part about dependence in relationships. It almost never announces itself. It disguises itself as devotion. You call constant checking in caring. You call the panic you feel when they pull away proof of how much you love them. Underneath all of that can be a harder belief that you only really matter when someone else is actively choosing you. That's why a slightly slower reply, or a change in someone's tone, can feel like the ground shifting beneath your feet. Not because anything's actually wrong, but because a part of you is watching them for evidence that you're still safe, still wanted. I want to be clear, this isn't a character flaw. It's an old survival strategy, and it made sense once, but it comes at a real cost. People in this pattern often stop voicing what they actually need because asking might come across as too much. They get gentler, more accommodating, while keeping score of the other person's every mood shift just to know where they stand. Jung described real connection as something closer to a chemical reaction between two people. Genuine contact changes both of them, rather than one bending to keep the other close. A real relationship isn't one person disappearing to preserve the peace. It's two people showing up as they are, each changed a little by the encounter. Here's an image that might help. Picture your inner world as a house with its own heating system. If that system is broken, you depend entirely on the fire someone else brings over. The second they leave, the cold rushes back in, and you panic, desperate to keep them there no matter the cost. But if your house has its own working heat, someone's presence still adds warmth, genuinely, meaningfully, but they're no longer the only thing keeping you from freezing. Self-healing is building that internal heating system. It doesn't make love matter less. It makes love something that adds to your life, instead of something that holds your entire life together. And here's what surprises people most. This actually makes relationships better, not colder. When you're not silently panicking every time someone needs space, you can let them be a real, imperfect human being, someone who gets tired, distracted, or occasionally gets it wrong, without your whole sense of safety collapsing. This doesn't mean tolerating disrespect or staying somewhere unhealthy. You still know your limits. You still know when it's time to walk away from something genuinely harmful. The difference is that now you're choosing from a place of clarity, not from the fear that you can't survive on your own. Try this. Tomorrow, before you check a single message, sit for 2 minutes and ask yourself one question. Today, am I about to act from love or from the fear of losing something? Then choose one small action based on the honest answer. Maybe that means saying what you actually need instead of staying silent. Maybe it means not sending the anxious text and sitting with the discomfort instead. Maybe it just means giving 20 minutes to something that's only for you. Small as it sounds, that's the whole practice. Every time you do it, you're reminding the deepest part of yourself that closeness and freedom aren't opposites. You can have both. So let me bring this back to where we started. Healing was never about learning to need no one. Human beings are wired for connection, for hands that show up when we're tired, for people who understand us without a full explanation. That part never goes away, and it shouldn't. What actually changes is quieter than that. You stop handing your entire sense of peace over to someone else's mood, presence, or approval. Other people can walk beside you. They can light parts of the path you couldn't see alone. But the deepest room, the one only you can enter, still has to be opened by you, with honesty and with time. If parts of this video felt uncomfortably familiar, that's not a bad sign. That's the first honest look at something that's been running in the background for a long time. This kind of change rarely happens in one dramatic moment. It happens slowly, in small choices, until one day you notice you're not scanning the room for permission anymore. If this helped you see something more clearly today, consider subscribing. We dig into these patterns every week. And if you want to go deeper, there's another video linked right here on setting boundaries without the guilt that usually follows. Go watch that one next. Take care of yourself, not because someone else told you to, but because at some point, that has to start being your own decision.